those who have free minds. Those who can see behind the veil of illusion, know the truth, and can stand on it.
My pro-black, really pro-black, anti-hip-hop dress code. That's no cap, no facts. My white cells assassinate. Any kind of virus get chewed up, masticate. My immunity's indestructible. I'm a pillar of my community, no deductible. General Tucson leading the revolution. To black problems, we are the only fucking solution. No outsiders, no white saviors, we gatekeeping. I keep trying to wake them up cause they stay sleeping. Chooks is armed with ancestral wisdom, so I don't trust people that still trust the system. We gotta eat like Sebi, fight like Ali, think like Malcolm, migrate to Merca, Somali. I carry my own water, so I value every drop of it. Drowning at the bottom, so I swim up to the top of it.
If I say it, then I mean it. I'm never backing down. Only a few real ones left now. If it's truth, then I'ma stand on it. If it's justice, then I'ma stand on it. If I say it, then I mean it. I'll never take it back. And if you ever hear me say it, then it's facts. That's my word, and I'ma stand on it. What you heard, I'ma stand on it. Yeah. What happened to principles, character, fortitude? Healing through alchemy, magic is what I'm born to do. Time to purge the planet from human toxicity. People do any and everything for publicity. It's way out of control, destructive, they weak and careless. We either stand for what is right or else the people perish. Putting these devils in a panic, now we got them frantic. The righteousness of justice is poetic, Pac and Janet. You don't know lies from truth when you wearing blinders. Wisdom separates the strong people from the spineless. They tell me to kill them with kindness, be considerate, but everybody's capping out here, nothing's legitimate. Nobody surrounded us everywhere, but the souls is missing. The enemy is always watching and the ops is listening. No wonder most of these people feeling defeated. The language of God is encoded and they can't read it. If I say it, then I mean it. I'm never backing down. Only a few real ones left now. If it's truth, then I'ma stand on it. If it's justice, then I'ma stand on it. If I say it, then I mean it. I'll never take it back. And if you ever hear me say it, then it's facts. That's my word, and I'ma stand on it. What you heard, I'ma stand on it. Rusty Chucks, Kai Phoenix, yeah.
That's how you start the show, okay?
Right.
Peace and Black Power family. Welcome to another episode of Nuts Radio. Place pronounces born. This is your host, Knowledge Born Live. Let me put my W's up, you know what I'm saying? Because we about to go to the west side. How they say it? The west side. We about to go to the west side. The west side, Joe. Of Chicago for this amazing, transformative storytelling goddess that has blessed us with her presence today to share her story, her journey with us. She loves us enough to bless us and grace us with a little bit of her time and a little bit of her story. She is a story whisperer. She is a healer. She is a broadcast mastermind. She be out here tearing up the streets. She's like the only person I know from Chicago that run Atlanta. You know, and Atlanta don't be letting people from the outside of Atlanta run Atlanta or the inside of Atlanta run Atlanta. But she is one of them femme fatales that is tearing up the stages, tearing up the airwaves, and using those skills to revitalize and motivate our minds one story at a time. So it becomes my honor and privilege at this time to introduce some, present the others. The best from the west side, okay? Naimah, welcome to the platform. How are you, Queen?
Thank you. I am very gracious and humbled to be here. So gratitude. Thank you for having me on your platform.
I love it. I am glad that you're here. There is no one like you, okay? So we're here.
Yes.
So the story. Where do you want to start in the story, with the story, how the story go? Do we just let the story flow? How do you want to go? You know
all right. Well, I guess I'll tell I guess I'll start with the book. I am a published author, and I currently have a book out called My Lessons from Love. Now, this is where it gets good. My Lessons from Love is actually a book full of real life lessons that I learned through unfortunate and tragic deaths in my life. About 2 years ago, I lost my uncle suddenly in a motorcycle accident, and then literally 1 year later, to the exact same month in April, I lost the love of my life. Somebody that I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, to pancreatic cancer. He was my best friend. He was my homie, lover, all of the above. And he was young. He was 38. So that kind of took me on a spiral. Losing my uncle was one thing. I've lost family members before. But losing a romantic partner to cancer, in his 30s, like, that really took me on a mental spiral. And the only way that I could kind of save myself was to start writing. I do have a bachelor's degree in journalism and communication. So writing has always been my thing. But when this happened, it was like, did he say vote or die? For me, this was write or die. It was really having to kind of get those thoughts out of my head so that I could find at least a baseline of living. I'm happy to be here, to say the least. Mentally going through these things, depression, grief, trauma, still being a mother, still having to raise two children. My oldest has autism. So still just dealing with all of those things. So I couple that up into an amazing story. It's actually kind of fiction, to save the silly and retarded. We kind of changed a lot of things in the story, names, timelines, and things like that. But all the lessons are real. They're all real life, hard hitting lessons. And I've been kind of taking the book on a bit of a tour. We've created these things called community conversations, where I take my book into spaces full of people who are open. They really don't even know what's going on when they get there. They like, oh, we got a little wine and cheese. Okay, I'll come. But but then they leave in tears. They leave with, new friends. They leave discovering that the person next to them is actually going through chemo right now. So those are kind of some of, like, my goals with the book. But it's amazing. It's an amazing piece.
I love that. I love that. We got some room over here in the virtual space. You know what I'm saying? You want to get some folks together, some black folks together, and
Yes.
have them review, do a little book club, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Just let me know how I can
Okay.
support. I definitely am for that, because you never know how your story, because we internalize our story, so we take it in on ourselves and we say, "What was me?" And then there are aspects of the story that can help somebody else. Like, you literally, you don't know the next person next to you is going through chemo or what they're going through. Everybody look fine. So if you look fine, you're all right.
Right. You are fine.
You understand what I'm saying? So, and
Good. Okay. Cool.
right. So oftentimes that's not the case.
Mhm.
Often you have no idea what somebody's going through, and then in that space of vulnerability, that vulnerability is shared. It's a shared effort. So how did you have the courage? I'll ask. How did you have the courage to compartmentalize everything that you were going through, everything that happened, and begin to channel from a space where you can go from traumatic experiences and losses to redemption and restoration with your pen?
That's actually a really good question, and a really long journey. If I backtrack, I've actually left a few things out as far as, like, the traumas and the tragedy goes. So, one thing that really stuck with me that I really had to work through. Long story really short. One night, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm still in Chicago at the time. I'm sitting on my porch just enjoying the night. Right. All of a sudden, the car rides up and he shoots my neighbor 4 times in the head. This is a guy that I grew up with. I've known since I was 2 years old. That was an incident that stuck out to me that I had to process. So what happened was, in those months coming, I still have not sat outside at that particular house that my family owns. I found myself having to take my pistol with me to take out the garbage. I found myself not being comfortable walking to the gas station. And this is an area that I've grown up in my whole life. Like, you can't put me in any hood that I'm not comfortable in, because that's just, my surroundings. So once I found myself, like, really not letting my kids go on the front porch to play anymore. I'm like, okay, something isn't right. There's no way that I should be nervous walking to my car. And so what I realized was that in that moment, I had so much stuff unprocessed. The things that were going through my mind was, number one, did somebody see me on my porch? Did they see me, see what they did? Is somebody now looking for me? And then number two, process seeing somebody so full of life 1 second and watching the life being taken from their body, that in itself played in my mind over and over again. And that's when I said, okay, you might need a little bit of help outside yourself. So I've been on a journey in therapy for over about 11 years now. Like I said, I have my oldest child is autistic. He's almost 17 years old. So this has been a journey of understanding the benefits of talking, expressing, and communication. So when that happened, I'm like, okay, self, you need to get somewhere because you're starting to spiral internally. But like you said, nobody could see it on the outside. I'm still going to work. I'm still doing all of these things. But on the inside, there is this anxiety that's building up. It began to manifest in me having high blood pressure. I've never had high blood pressure in my life. It's not from the foods that I eat. I eat, very well. My doctor literally said it is from the stress and anxiety of these situations. So I started to go to therapy specifically for myself. And then I started to force myself to go outside. Like I literally have conversations with myself when I'm in uncomfortable moments and I say mantras out loud. You are safe. You're okay. Like God is in control. And those were one of those moments where I realized that God is indeed in control. I was about 15 feet away from him. Anything could have happened in that moment, but to realize like the protection and kind of some of those things that go along with my faith, and I'm starting to see those manifested in like my actual walk. I'm like, okay, God, we therapy, God, communication, concept. I think I might be okay. Like let me kind of put these things all together. And that was really the beginning of my journey when I realized that I was not okay. I couldn't start being okay until I realized that I was not okay. Yeah. So there are a lot of things that we kind of come across, in our life that might not even stick out in that moment. But as we look back, we can say, like, that is the catalyst. That's the moment that started me, on my progression. Or sometimes, unfortunately, that's the moment that started my downward spiral.
Definitely, definitely. I see some of my war veterans up in here, like myself. You see what I'm saying? So that's dealing with these kind of things in the military setting, already being predisposed in the environments that we grew up in, and the trauma that we normalize. We normalize trauma, as Black people in America. The the continent, the country, the
Yeah.
corporation, however you want to deem it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We have transgenerational trauma from one generation to the next, compound that hasn't been resolved, that gets passed from one generation to the next. So we grew up in feuds and family feuds and neighborhood feuds and street feuds and societal feuds and then
Right.
American feuds. Like all of these things are fueled epigenetically from one space to the next. And we're expected to find coping mechanisms to deal with a lot of the stress, the strain, the hell, and the trauma. You know, and the resentment towards divinity comes in. You
Mm-hmm.
see what I'm saying? Like that becomes the first thing. Like if there's a God, then why? Type of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that comes into play. So there are a lot of questions. There's a lot of frustration, and that's real and that's pain. And when you look in the Bible, for instance, you see that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I don't go back and forth with people about stuff. I'm like, hey, you say that's what that is? I said,
Right.
no doubt. Like I can see this dude right now. You understand what I'm saying? I can see this dude out here walking around right now. You got children, you got Cain and Abel. You see what I'm saying? Like whatever the
Absolutely.
personages are, our ancestors were talking to us in a way to try to help us
Yes.
so you can recognize those signs and those symptoms and those characteristics and traits in individuals. So I'm thankful that you found a way to channel that, and you spoke about therapy. We still in May, right? You know what I'm saying? But we
Right, mental
talk
health.
about the
Yes.
importance of, you know, healing from that particular space, in the mental space, and an emotional space, and how did you, overcome this space to actually feel safe in an unsafe environment, regardless of, how do you feel safe in an unsafe environment? Or, how do you deal with that?
Well, I can't say that I 100% feel safe. I ran from Chicago. I don't live in Chicago anymore. I live in Georgia. Hey, town. But that was part of my coping mechanism. What I realized is that I was ingrained in an environment full of trauma and violence. And I was watching my children deal with death on an astonishing level. I share this quite often that when my son was in fifth grade, he lost two classmates because the father burned down the house that, the mother and the children were in. This happened on a block over from us. So not only do you have that physical representation of the house burned down, but now my fifth grader is dealing with the death of a classmate at the hand of a parent that he watched pick these kids up every single day. So it was moments like that where I'm watching small incidents, but then I'm watching the ripple effect. So I said before I could heal myself on the inside, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your first basic level is safety and food. So I had to get up out of Chicago. Dante passed in April 2022, and I was out of Chicago in August. It only took me like 4 or 5 months to realize that I could no longer flourish or even survive in this environment. So that's the first step that I would suggest to anybody, is to become physically safe. And, whether we grow up in a household with parents or spouses that are abusive, you need to move around. You need to get physically safe. Whether you are going to school in an environment where the school is negative and abusive, you need to move around. So this actually kind of brings me to one of the chapters that I love in the book. And it's called Money Can Absolutely Buy Happiness. And a lot of times people read that title and they know me as a person, they know how faith filled I am, and I'm not really materialistic, and they like, this is strange coming from you. But what I describe in the book is that when I lost I'll just refer to him as my significant other. When I lost my significant other to cancer, I couldn't feed myself or my children for like a week. I was so depressed. All I did was cry and sit in the dark. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, I got money. I don't have to go into the kitchen and cook. I can actually go to Rodi. It's one of my favorite Mediterranean restaurants. Sit down with my kids and pay $60 for a meal that's high vibrational, full of nutrients, and that's healthy. In that depression, I found myself not being able. I'll be honest with you, not wanting to shower. I didn't want to take a shower. I didn't feel like getting clean. I definitely wasn't washing any clothes. But what did money do in that moment? Money allowed my sad and depressed self to walk across the street to Target and buy packs of underwear until I was better. So there are some things that we can do to kind of like safeguard ourselves in that moment. And one of those things is to become more affluent, to have more money and more resources. Because what I tell people all the time is rich people, they don't not deal with death. Rich people don't not deal with sadness. They just have a lot of money and people around that can kind of cushion that fall when they are not there. So if that's another thing that I would suggest to us as Black people, invest in life insurance, stop, you know what I'm saying? Get things together so that although we're coming from a disadvantage, we're putting ourselves in a place to have these safety nets around us so that we're not so far disadvantaged. I can't imagine if I did not have the financial resources in that moment. Me and my kids might still be drowning, you know? So those were two things. Number one, become physically safe, move yourself if you need to, and also boss up in the times when things are good so that in those rough times you don't just go spiraling out of control and you have nothing.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. I love it. So let's talk about the writing process
Mhm.
from the book, like, the writing journey, and then like how did you, kind of confront those things. I know you said you made it kind of like a story, but you still have to call on those aspects of, your life, those characters, things like that.
Mhm.
You have to develop them. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You have to have the balance between, okay, wait a minute, if I say like too much of this, then somebody gonna try to figure out, is this
Mhm.
really fiction? Or how much of that, did you have to go through as far as the tug of war, and then, basically, confronting those aspects of self to be able to get to the point where your book starts, and then talk to us about start to finish. What did it feel like when it was done?
Absolutely. So this was my writing process. Like most of the book was written in a yellow legal, I think they call them legal pads. It was nothing fancy. It was literally me with the sheets of paper in these moments of like severe sadness and depression. So for like that first 6 months, the book didn't actually take shape until it was actually all written. Those first few months of writing was literally just writing my heart out. The chapters are not in the order in which they were written. So that's what I kind of like about like the writing process. It's literally yours to own. So I just started crying and writing out my feelings. Everything was about Dante. That's my significant other who passed. Everything was about Dante at first. It was Dante, 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 until somebody else actually like read my work and they like, girl, this is good. Like you could actually make this into a book. My goal of writing was not actually to make it into a book. My goal of writing was to save myself because nobody around me could. Friends, family, like either they weren't really interested in helping or they didn't really know how to. I didn't really delve into that question because the answers would cause probably more confusion than they would help. So after I was just writing and crying and like fuck everybody and hate life and just like writing and things, I'm like, okay, let's do some help with this. And so that's when my lessons from love, the title came up because as I was reading, I'm like, these are all lessons that I learned from losing a loved one. So the title was easy. But then I went back and I looked and I said, okay, now let's get the story out. Because as a journalist and as a writer, there are two different things between oration, just kind of like telling things, and then creating an actual story with a plot, with, twists and turns, with an ending. So that's what I then went back to do. The book opens up with a chapter on parental loss. It was actually about the one and only day that I met my dad. I met him for about 4 hours. And that's when I said, okay, I have a story. So instead of basing it on me, our character is love. So my lessons from love is actually a double entendre. It's a play on the main character's name and as well the lessons from actual, love and love relationships. And I just grew love up in the book. I said, how do we want to do this? So I walked love through a lot of the situations in my life, but we changed a lot of the names, titles, settings, and things like that. And I just let love have fun. I let love tell my story through an unfiltered lens. It's a fictional story, so things get a little bit exaggerated and things of that nature. But that's kind of what the process was. After the tears, and I realized that I could actually use this to help people. That's when it got fun, and I said, "Oh, we about to have a good time with this."
So when was the book completed, and then like what was that experience like, and then if you could share with us, your first couple of sales or reactions from people, things like that, and one or two significant examples where you was like, I did the right thing, like this was my it moment right here.
Okay. I saved the it moment for last because I recently had that and I was like, okay. Um, so the book actually took from April to November. So I think that's maybe 6 or 7 months. It took me about 6 or 7 months to actually write it. And because I'm just kind of been in this creative space, I've been doing this for a while. I know people who are in this space. So I reached out to a homegirl of mine and I'm like, Rachel, can you please help me? I got this book. And she's a graphic designer. And she's like, oh girl, not only will I design your cover, I actually know a good friend of mine who publishes books. So that's kind of how I found that path to actually self-publishing and getting my work done. It was through two really amazing young ladies, and I actually have to shout them out: Rachel Turner of Rose Mint Media and Nicola Mitchell. Lifetime just actually did a story on her life, so she is an amazing person to know. But yeah, they have guided me through this entire process. 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, Amazon Publishing said the spine isn't right, the letter's too big. Like they were, really there for me. And that's kind of what you need when you have a dream that you want to bring to fruition. I really believe that this has been a God ordained journey. Like I said, I had no idea that I even wanted to write a book and publish it. So, when Rachel introduced me to Nicola, and they just kind of became my girl dream team, and we was like, we're gonna just make it happen. So that's kind of how the book got published. It's easier nowadays to publish versus kind of 10, 20 years ago when you had to work with publishing houses and things like that. So self-publishing is pretty easy nowadays. So I encourage anyone watching, if you have a story to tell, the hardest part of writing a book is writing a book. Once you write that book, it's going to move, and things are going to come together. But if you got a story to tell, go ahead and write it, because there are many people, many, many, many people who need your story. Oh, and you said it moments. Okay. So I've created this space called Community Conversations. So I went to a realty group and I was like, okay, I know you have these apartment complexes and I know you have these constituencies. I wrote a book, and what I really want to do is bring a space to the people that they don't have to go look for a therapist. They don't have to do all of that. It's a space where we can come together. We'll talk about some lessons from the book, but it's an open conversation to talk about grief, trauma, all of these things. They're like, what? Of course, we will love to do so. So, kind of put all of that together, and I didn't think anybody was gonna come. But it actually turned out to be like 20 something people that came. We had to like shut it down because it was going for so long. It went for over 2 hours. Everybody was so open, and everybody left saying, I needed this. There were so many people. I kind of kicked the conversation off with the question, what are some sources of grief that don't come from death? And that kind of like got people's heads turning, and people were saying, well, you know what, I did actually grieve the loss of my family when my parents divorced. When my dad was incarcerated, like that felt like a death. Another person actually said, when me and my best friend broke up, that friend trauma like stayed with me. Like I grieved a person that I loved so much. So just throwing that question kind of out there and making that safe space, everybody just opened up. And I mean, people were crying. You had like men, women, like it was black, white, Latino, like I think it was a person that barely spoke English, but it was just the vibes and the love. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm here for. So I'm actually working with, well, I won't say who, but I'm working with a few libraries and kind of getting into some schools and some after school settings to kind of bring this healing and this openness to, more spaces in the community. So that was my moment when I was like, okay, yes, I'm here to sell the book, but no, I'm really here to touch people outside of Instagram, outside of the internet. I am really here to use my experiences to help others know that it is okay, number one, to not be okay, and it is okay to be open about it. So this is the event right here, and this was the moment where I was like, okay, this is what's up.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to show the visual, add the visual element in there. Because people be like, "What's she talking about?" This right here.
Right,
Oh, for real? Yeah, yeah. You need to bring that to my city. Okay, yeah, bring
right.
that to my city. Yeah. So yeah, I think that was a beautiful, culminating, grand, unifying point in regards to that. So in this, discriminate to the trauma, trauma is real. You know, me and my god sisters were talking about that movie Collateral Beauty, and we turned that into a discussion, and that was something you know you didn't expect. Like you see what I'm saying? The tear jerks, the waterworks start coming. You
Mm-hmm.
start talking about a lot of those things that's going on. So we talked about that. We talked about Antoine Fisher, and
Ooh, that movie.
uh, we talked about Fences, the movie Fences. So
Hmm.
that cinematic space is oftentimes an easier way to have open discussions
Mm-hmm.
than the religious or the spiritual space or the political space, because everybody's acculturated a certain kind of way, and if you didn't get it the certain kind of way, then that's where the conflict is. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
what version of the Bible you talking about? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, so all of these things become barriers into actual communication for healing to take place. So that was just definitely something. Now you spoke about your children
Mm-hmm.
and mothering through this process. Did y'all ever have any courageous conversations that you can share in
Oh
regards to
yeah.
grief and loss, and hearing their thoughts and what were their perspectives on whatever you can share in that space. I don't want you to get into, you see what I'm saying, but as
Yeah.
far as that, and what were some things that you might suggest to parents, to mothers, to fathers, and in regards to talking to their children about loss.
For me, we had many conversations. I'm a very open person, and being a single mother, unfortunately, my son's father was incarcerated the day he came home from the hospital. So I have been raising an autistic son on my own for almost 17 years. So what I've learned through that journey is that my kids are actually a partner. I know a lot of times, especially coming from the Black community, it's you do what I say. I'm the parent, I'm the mama, you listen. And part of that is true because we all need discipline and structure. However, what I learned was that my children were sent in this lifetime to be a partner for me. They are my soulmates in many ways. So it was very helpful that I included them in this journey. He has also been a part of their lives for their entire lives. So I had to realize that number one, I'm not the only one that's sad. I had to give them a space to express their grief. My daughter, I realized that she was way more spiritual than I had even given her credit for. Just as we were going through this process, even before he passed away, there were moments that she called in his health before they manifested in the physical. And though that gave me an inkling that I really have to respect them as people because their souls in an avatar. And while their avatar, their physical body may have only been on this plane for 9 to 10 years, their souls, baby, may have lived for ethers. And I respect what they bring to my journey. So as I was spiraling, I was very open with them. This is not a good day for mommy. Mommy is sad. Mommy is angry. I thought that it was really important to express to them those. It wasn't a lot, but it was a few moments that I was like, Lord, what are you doing now? What are you doing? So in those moments of like frustration and anger, I thought it was very important to show them my relationship with the Most High. Not just talk about it, sit in the mosque and, pray, but I needed to show them the Most High working in real time when you slapped in the face with like depression, when when the will to live is not as strong as it might have been in other times. I knew that I was going to get the glory. I knew that I was going to have the victory. So I wanted to be open and showing my children what it looked like to hang on, to like stay in there because life is going to get pretty rough for them, at some point. at some point they're gonna have to deal with it. So I think one of the most things was like open communication. Why mommy ain't took a shower in 3 days? Okay, well let's talk about it. You know what I'm saying? I got to a point where I was scared to eat fast food. He died at 38 of cancer. I was scared of everything. I'm like, I don't want to die. I don't want my kids to die. Like, I just got in a very anxious state, and it was very helpful for me to be transparent with my children. Not only were they open and accepting, they actually helped me through, a lot of moments. I was able to really see that phrase in action. Train up a child in the way it should go, and when he is older, he will not depart from those ways. My son, like I said, my son is autistic. I don't necessarily know that the things that I say get across to him, except for in those moments I saw. When he stepped up and was there for mom, when he, is cooking and doing his best because he saw that I needed to support my mom. I saw those as character building moments. And I just would really encourage people to not push the kids away, as a child, I was pushed away. It's grown up stuff. This is grown up stuff. This is grown up stuff. Well, I one day became a grown up and didn't know how to deal with the stuff because I was always pushed out of the room. So we not throwing sex in front of the kids or anything like that, but we are absolutely recognizing that I can be a better example through the physical versus just the verbal. So just, having my kids really along with me through this journey has been very helpful for us all. And I think I forgot. I think you asked another question, but I kind of forgot. I'm crying a little bit.
You were good. You did more than enough. That open line of communication. I think if I took anything away from the scamdemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, however you want to deal with it, is that those boundaries that you set forth, that you become acculturated with, that were meant for our safety and security, weren't explained as that.
Mm-hmm.
It just it sounds authoritative. So one of the stigmas in our community, uh, between the mothers and the daughters and the grandmothers and the daughters and the matriarchs, was, oh, you out here being fast,
Mm-hmm.
you out here being fast, blah blah blah. Instead of them saying, hey, I was molested when I was young, I was raped when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
Men forced themselves upon me. I was
Mm-hmm.
sexualized at a very young age, and I don't want that for you. So
Mm-hmm.
this is why I'm talking to you like this.
Right.
I want you to realize what's going on. That they didn't have the language for that because that wasn't of their time.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that, like, oh, the old generation hating on the new generation and blah 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 and this and that, and they jealous of me, and this, you internalize it like this because
Right.
this negative self-talk is something that comes, but the reality of it is the pain and the hurt and the shame and the resentment that's
Yes.
there. You might have siblings from those experiences, and to dress that up means to invalidate the blessing that may have came from the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, putting the fear of God in you in the space is a way for them to not have to reveal the other aspects. So the
Exactly.
fact that you were able to be vulnerable enough, with your children, and speak to them in that kind of way, it's empowering, and it sets another precedence. We think generational curses is just wealth.
Mm-hmm.
What's greater wealth than health, in
Right.
your total well-being and that restorative space. So yeah, that vulnerability and being open, and having that space of, okay, this is a role, it's not fixed.
Mm-hmm.
That egalitarian space to where, okay, the best qualified in this particular season is the one, versus it's this, it's this, it's that, it's that. You see
Right.
what I'm saying? That fluidity, to be able to do that, because that's a cycle of life. Uh, once a man, twice a child, as our
Mm-hmm.
ancients wrote in the scriptures. So you get up in age. Somebody, that's not indiscriminate to whatever season, because
Right.
life happens at any point. Anything can happen to you. You could befall an injury where you know you are disabled. You
Mhm.
see what I'm saying? So, or you mentally debilitated, emotionally debilitated. Who's able to recognize those signs and symptoms and do what's necessary? Is who's supposed to be able to make those decisions that are wise in that space. So, you know, thankfully God allowed you to see, you
Mhm.
know, what you created. You see what I'm saying? Like, yeah, trust that you created, righteous beings that will be able to do what they need to do. They here on their assignment as well. We their caretakers. I learned that from my son. My 6-year-old son at the time. He's like, yo, I'm just stressed out. He looked at me like I'm, and above me, generations above me were like, what? They'll start telling you out stressing your stress. You're like, if you
Right.
stressed out, you stressed out. They'll be like, what? You ain't got to pay for nothing and
You
blah blah
ain't
blah
got
and
it
this and this and
right.
this and this and this and this. All of these are results of decisions that you make. These are
Right.
decisions that you made. So he's 6 and he's worried about the family. Everybody's getting sick and all kind of stuff. He's just worried about everybody's health and well being, and he don't want nobody to die. He's 6. He's supposed to just be able to be 6.
Right.
So in that moment, I'm like, oh, okay, I got to get eye level. We got to discuss this, and we have to mine this out. And that's a new
Mhm.
dynamic that wasn't in this space of experimental occupation that we call
Mhm.
America. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, I had to, let the daddy guard down and talk to my little brother, like, okay, what's happening? What's going on? Like,
Right.
okay, yeah, it look uncertain for me too. I gotta be for real. Like, what's going on? You see what I'm saying? So, you know, that space of vulnerability changed the dynamic of how we relate to one another. So I'm glad that, you know, indiscriminate to how it may have come about,
Mhm.
that it's there, it's there and it's, beautiful.
And I think you hit another topic that I didn't even realize came from me writing the book, and that is I was able to forgive in parts, not the whole way. I'm still working on it, but I was able to forgive, like some mommy things, some daddy things, because I realized through writing that book they are people too. And why you can't always say that everybody did their best, because everybody might not have, but they still people, and there's still a small room for grace, even for a mother or for a father who didn't do right by the child. So that kind of freed me up a bit too, because I was holding on to some things I had no idea I was holding on to. I had so many issues with the parent that raised me that I didn't even realize that I had issues from the parent that was non-existent. So, just kind of like those small things, and just being able to realize, okay, everybody is human. Let me give a little bit more grace in this situation, because that's going to free me up a little bit. Um, that also was a big takeaway from writing the book as well.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. We got a few minutes left. I want to talk about what you doing on the radio. What's happening over there. You done took over Atlanta. You put Atlanta in your pocket. You told Atlanta grab your belt loop. You understand what I'm
I
saying?
have not taken over Atlanta, okay?
Yes, yes. That's what she's. Look, she ain't say it. I said I had said it. She ain't
Right.
say it,
I'm like,
but
don't
I
get
had
the
said it.
people mad at me now.
Look,
But no, Atlanta has been an amazing space since I have been here. Oh gosh, why can't I didn't even think of it? But I have been I've had my own radio show on the radio. I have been able to host these community spaces. I have met so many of the who's who in Atlanta, and I'm really just excited about the next steps. I do have an entertainment podcast that's coming out. Again, we are moving towards getting this program, these community conversations, into the Fulton County School District, working with some local libraries. So I really am excited about the trajectory and about everybody and everything that's going on down here. Like, I will be running Atlanta. I will be. Not yet, but I look forward to the progression of, professionally and personally.
that's what I'm talking about. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Atlanta, Watch out, okay? Naima in
Watch
the
out.
building, okay? She's so shy, okay? She's
Right.
shy,
Thank you.
not shy, but she's so shy at the same time.
CHI.
Yeah. All right. So last question and then final thoughts. Last question. You got everything going on. You saving the world. You saving yourself. You saving the family. One story at a time. One place at a time.
Yeah.
You know, all everything. So how do you balance? Or is balance a thing for you? Is self care a thing for you? Is it a priority in your life or not? Or what's up with that? How do you make
it
that
it
happen?
is. I work out like every day of the week, and it is not because I have a weight goal in mind. It's actually my relaxation and my peace. I go to the sauna about 4 or 5 days a week, and I spend at least 30, 45 minutes in there. I walk like 3 to 5 miles a day. But that's just because I love being outside in nature. I ground myself. You will often see me around Atlanta with no shoes on. Man's your business. That is how I am grounding myself and becoming into one, into peace with nature. But in reality, I do need to find more ways. Physical exercise has been kind of my outlet, but I do need to find more ways of just kind of soothing myself and kind of working my nerves because a lot of me is given to the world, to my community, to my children, to my jobs. So I'm hoping to find more outlets. So hopefully, we talk again. I'll have a further answer to that question.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. So, final thoughts, and mixing in something that you would say to your younger self. Talk to the young people, talk to the elders, talk to our ancestors, talk to whoever you need to talk to. Give them a message, give them a word, and then tell them where to find you.
Okay, if I could tell my younger self or anybody anything, it would have to be to love yourself because you are the center of the universe. Um, Everything stems from self, even knowledge or understanding of the Most High. Our thoughts begin everything. I just want to let people know the egg definitely came before the chicken. So, what that means is the environment. If form follows function, then the necessity for the function was there before the actual being. So, you have to think it. You have to have the understanding and the realization of the environment in your space before you can physically manifest it or walk into it. So everything starts with you. And if I could have realized that at maybe 15 or 16 years old, my life probably would be a lot different right now. But I realized it before it was too late. So I love myself and I hope that you all love you because that is truly where, things start to get really great at. My baby come
And
back.
where to find you?
Oh, you guys can check me out on Instagram. I'm Naimah Sochai on everything. Naimahsochi. YouTube, Instagram. My Facebook is private. Mind your business. But other than that, yeah, social media really is a great way to find me. My YouTube page is gonna have all of like my cooking shows and just like everything, radio, everything there. And also find me in a community. I really like to connect with people one on one, so find me in one of these community conversations that we're having around Atlanta. We would love, love, love for you to join us.
All right. I gotta hook you up with Zane's daughter if you're not already hooked up with Zane's daughter. You see, she
No,
got this entertainment podcast stuff coming up. She got podcast recording space, and she just dope, dope, dope. Like her
I
mama,
would
dope,
love
dope,
that.
dope. She like dope, dope, dope. So
You're
writer,
actually the
publisher.
second person that mentioned Zane to me today. It was a whole other
Mm,
conversation. So I feel like we
okay,
might be
all right.
aligned for something. Like I would love that.
Yeah, she's been here. Her daughter's been here, and some of the authors that her daughter is working with have been here as well. So I'll reach out to Liz and I'll connect y'all hopefully. Y'all could do some things together.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity and this platform.
It's all right. All right. Are you still on the radio?
Periodically, I am.
Periodically. Okay, that's what's up right there. Okay. Got to periodically catch you on the radio.
Yes. But periodically because I am moving more so into some solo entertainment efforts. So I will be sharing those with you all, and I would love for you all to join the ride.
Hey. All right, y'all. We got the great, the multi-talented, the master healer, the author, the storyteller, the Chi-Town lady who taking over Atlanta by Stizorn. Naimah. Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
Peace, y'all.
Priesthood. I miss you, mommy, kiss you, golly. Christian body, flying disc, reminisce of Garvey. Surrounded by the elders, probably. Then I sit with Gandhi. Mahalia, the whalers with Marley. Afro beats, a supernatural priest. Carry the sword of the Lord, clash with the beast. After me, there's casualties, catastrophes, disaster, drastically. I write along passionately, microphone mastery. Tribe known the Maccabees. They say I look like an Olmec. Books of the old text. African Bush or Kush or the Hoteps. After came a pharaoh who knew not Joseph. But kings reign the same apparel, same culture. Every time I rhyme, they add wings to my sculpture. Every line's a paradigm, prime supernova. The being feature holder. Elohim, see through dreams, out the rain, ride the streams like I'm Noah. Moses, I throw my staff, turn the cobra. Vipers fast, bite the staff, bite the soldiers. With this microphone, I'm everlast, I'm Jehovah. The first one to work, I'm never last, I'm the owner.
All of the things I'm talking, not the yeah. Try what you not do if you're not the fair. My mind they tell me to disappear. So come and help me, cause I don't pray. My man, I don't pray. Come on, man, I can't stay for one place. For God's sake, my day. Don't take my fear from you. Talking shit, what the no get enemy? See you for forwards, I put up my eyes, ten shot, my eye, just good. I cry, offshore, but my dread love. Believe me, I don't pray, Muhammad, I don't pray. Come on, man, I can't stand.